Hello again, and welcome to the July 24th edition of Clean Commercial Transportation Update. I'm Bill Van Amberg, and along with my colleague Alicia Gildy, will be your guides for the next half hour of our webcast this week. Bonnie Trowbridge is at the controls, as always. Casey Okazaki and Whitley Porter are monitoring questions and chat, so please, as you have questions, share those with us, and we'll be as responsive as we can. We come to you on the heels of a tremendously huge week for our industry last week with the announcement of the 15-state MOU on zero-emission commercial vehicles. And we're really going to build on that this week with a packed rundown, Alicia.
That's right, Bill, and quite an exciting week we had last week, and this week really turning our attention on infrastructure. So as usual, we'll start off with industry news and trends coming from our very own Bill Van Amberg. Followed by that, we're bringing on our global director for our Drive to Zero program to hear about infrastructure policies to help move forward the adoption of medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles. And this is heavily complementing our conversation from last week and really talking about the infrastructure needs we're going to need to put in place to meet that demand.
It is a big deal around the world. We'll also, because of that, have a special conversation with the California Energy Commission. In fact, we've got the senior advisor to the main commissioner dealing with transportation, Ben D'Alba, will be joining us on their role and plans for scaling infrastructure to achieve the advanced clean truck rule timelines. But first, as usual, we want to hear from attendees. Alicia, what do we have for them today?
That's right. So we would like to kick off our program hearing from you. So with last week's announcement of the 15-state MOU on advancing zero-emission trucks and buses, we want to hear how has ACT and this recent MOU impacted you in terms of the work that you do. So starting off, has it greatly accelerated your work? Now you're planning on products and implementation? Secondly, has it raised the profile on the issues and now it's trying to figure out how do we move forward, how do we implement? Third, started to evaluate how this affects us. And then lastly, we're not seeing any real changes yet. So what do you think? How has this potentially impacted you and your work?
Interesting to see what people say. I can't believe it will have no real changes, but that is a possibility. I think people are just starting to get up to speed on what this really means by ramping to 2024 for the start date.
That's right. Bonnie, let's see those results. All right, so it looks like the second option here, raise the profile on these issues. Now it's trying to figure out how do we move forward and implement, and I would say it follows by not too many changes, but then folks are starting to evaluate how it impacts them and how they should be incorporating these new policies and programs into the work that they are doing. Well, great. Thank you everyone for your great participation. And Bill, we'll turn it over to you for industry news.
Definitely have our work cut out for us, and infrastructure is a really important topic to hit. But let's hit some of these other news stories today. I think one very interesting story is that the Environmental Protection Agency really has now pretty much announced that they are delaying their new national rule on lower NOx regulations. This would be to have gone to a rule closer to 90% reduction from EPA 2010 standards. The Cleaner Trucks Initiative was heading that way. They had planned to actually have a draft rule in place for review and comment this month, but EPA is now saying because of election and other constraints, particularly COVID-19, they've had to delay. We heard last week from Mary Nichols at CARB that CARB is going forward with their own version of a low NOx rule at their August board meeting. We're seeing a lot of technology development this past week, and some really interesting things are coming in automated vehicles. Fiat Chrysler and Waymo, which is the division coming out of Google, have signed an exclusive deal on self-driving commercial vehicles. This is an interesting one. They're going to focus first on the Ram ProMaster platform. As we've seen, Fiat Chrysler actually has an electric version of this platform now in Italy. We're also seeing some interesting developments in terms of new platforms moving out. Lightning Systems has added a Class 5 platform, an F550 from Ford, which is a cab chassis design usually you see very ubiquitous in cutaway shuttles, but also in box trucks and other deliveries. Lightning is an EQVM, a qualified vehicle modifier for Ford. Workhorse Vans is also now in production. This has been something that's been taking longer than many people had hoped, but they are now producing C650 and C1000 electric vans out of their facility. A lot of people are very happy to see this launch. Their first products are going to be used with Ryder and put out into rental fleets. In Europe, we're seeing continued investment. And one of the big stories that came out this past week was in a European partnership for hydrogen corridor. This would be rooted or based out of the port of Rotterdam. Air Liquide is one of the partners in this. And they're really looking at how by 2025 to have a corridor that could support 1,000 trucks coming out of that port and then moving through the Netherlands into Germany and to Belgium. In other news on automated vehicles, Navistar and TuSimple have teamed up. In fact, Navistar is investing in that San Diego-based company, which is already piloting autonomous Class 8 tractors. They have announced that they'll actually have a product, an autonomous Class 8 truck for sale in 2024. And not to be outdone, the group that's owned by Amazon, which is Aurora, is moving also to Arizona to focus on their commercial vehicle work. They've been working in lighter duty vehicles, but now moving to work on the larger platforms. So there's a lot of movement in this space right now. Movement up as well. We've seen a major player in the aircraft market, Airbus out of Europe, now has a city Airbus in development. This would be a fully electric powered and potentially autonomous shuttle, bigger than a taxi, smaller than a bus, but they're calling it the City Airbus. And it took its first flight in Germany just a few weeks ago. And finally, I just had to share this picture because it's so cool. So this is the Shanghai, or the new city skyline of Shanghai in China, with a Tesla semi hauling a crate. Well, this has been a viral video that a lot of people have been looking at. This crate apparently was to advertise a game, which is one of the biggest games in China. It's called a Game of Peace. And what was in the crate? A beautifully purple painted Tesla 3, which apparently has some role in Game of Peace. But who can't say that's not a cool picture? But enough of that for now. Let's get to our main theme of the day and the impacts from and next steps to prepare for the enactment of the Advanced Clean Truck Rule around the world. Alicia.
That's right, Bill. Thank you for that great lineup, and that was a great pick. All right, so bringing on our first presenter, and of course our dear colleague, Cristiano Picagna, with CalStart's Global Drive to Zero program. It's great to have you, Cristiano, because after having such a great program last week and talking with our friends with the California Air Resources Board, of course, Mary Nichols, and then with Paul Miller with NESCOM, really learning about the impact and the importance of these policies that we're seeing to advance zero-emission trucks and buses, and really understanding how that impacts our global community. And I think you have some great examples of leadership, and especially as we're thinking about our needs to scale infrastructure to accommodate and be ready to deploy those zero-emission vehicle technologies. You have some good examples from partners in Sweden as well as in Shenzhen, China. And first, maybe if we can start off, I'd love to hear from you on what have you been hearing from our global community on the advance of the Advanced Clean Truck Rule and the recent MOU. Anything that you've heard? What's happening in terms of your conversations with our international partners?
Absolutely, Alicia, and thanks for having me here. California and the Advanced Clean Trucking Rule has really set an example for other global regions. And following Mary's endorsement last week, we're going to be joining forces with the California ARB to engage with these leading regions on which policies and which incentives they should be in place to align with California. So two of these regions, as you mentioned, are China and Europe, which we'd like to highlight today. They're providing very strong incentives for zero-emission commercial vehicles, including infrastructure. And we think that the adoption of rules, such as the Advanced Clean Trucking Rule, can really complement these incentives and send much stronger signals to the market, and that will enable much faster economies of scale.
So if I could just ask on that note, I think everybody is so interested in what's going on in China because they've been such a leader on deploying vehicles. So what are you seeing come out of China and particularly around infrastructure?
Yeah, definitely, Bill. So as we all know, China is really the world leader in vehicle deployment and supportive incentives. So they're doing quite a lot on infrastructure. So today I would like to highlight some great work coming from Shenzhen. So they're a city in southern China, right next to Hong Kong, and who has really become a leader in vehicle electrification. So, not only all of their taxi fleets and bus fleets, which are already 100% electric, but also their urban trucks, where they have goals that 50% of urban trucks in Shenzhen will be electric by the end of this year. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the great work by our friends at the Rocky Mountain Institute in Shenzhen, who really provided a lot of the insights, but unfortunately couldn't be here with us today because it's 2 a.m. now in Beijing. So, but from the beginning of 2015 until the end of 2018, the fleet of urban delivery trucks and vans in Shenzhen has expanded from 300 to over 61,000. So quite tremendous accelerated growth there. And a few factors that supported this growth, like together with model availability, strong purchase incentives, exemptions from restrictions on urban access, the emergence of leasing companies that can bundle vehicle and infrastructure ownership onto a very simple fee. And on infrastructure specifically, there are like good subsidies for construction, some mandates from the government, the municipal government, on the number of location of these chargers, and also low industrial electricity prices for charging stations.
So they've taken a real package approach to this.
Absolutely. And I would really like to encourage everybody to really check the report from RMI and go much more in depth in terms of their lessons.
Cristiano, those were great examples. I also know that you've talked to a couple of our Drive to Zero partners on what's happening in Europe. Can you share some examples of infrastructure solutions that Sweden is putting forward?
Oh, absolutely. I'd like to highlight some great developments coming from our friends in Sweden. So the Västra Götaland region is the western region of Sweden. They include 49 municipalities, including the city of Gothenburg, and also the largest port in Scandinavia. So they're also the home of a lot of the vehicle manufacturing industry as well. So they're a Drive to Zero pledge partner, and they're thinking very strategically on vehicle infrastructure. But first, I think it's important for us to understand what is driving the push for charging infrastructure in Västra Götaland. So I'd like to hear quickly from Magnus Bertsun about some of these most effective drivers.
We decided politically that we want to be, will be fossil-free region to 2030. It's an ambitious goal, but of course this is nothing that just can be taken in a political assembly to be for it to be a reality. So we have also been working very closely with all the other important actors of society, of course with academia, with all the municipalities, with the civil society, but not at least also with the business side, with the business community. And we are automotive industry region, so we have all the players in our region in that sector, more or less. So this has been very important that we have been working together, understanding each other, trusting each other in doing the right steps. So from my side, I think that has been number one in being for us to be able to do the transition to a green economy, but also a zero emission free region when it comes to the transport sector, since transport is a major part of the emissions in not only our region but all over the world.
So really amazing to hear about their plans to be fossil-free by 2030 and the importance of broad coalitions to make this happen. It's really music to my ears. And really to deliver on these goals, our friends at Västra Götaland, together with Volvo and the business region Göteborg, are working on a regional charging pilot and plan aimed towards a fully electrified transport system by 2030, including cars, trucks, and buses. So they expect a 3 to 5 year investment, by both state and private funding for charging infrastructure with 3 fast charging corridors as well as overnight truck and bus charging at logistics depots, and public and semi-charging in city centers.
Really powerful, and that drive to fossil-free by 2030 is huge. I know Magnus, and he is a really a leader in that region for policy, but really for all of the subnational organizations in Europe, so he can carry that leadership for those fast-charging hubs. How is the global pandemic, though, affecting their plans in Sweden?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Beyond infrastructure, I was really happy to hear a good level of optimism coming from Sweden with respect to COVID and the impacts on industry and policy developments. So I'd like us to hear from Per Österström with the business region Gothenburg, who represents the industry sector in the region.
Looking forward to actually help mitigate the situation, I think public procurement will be one important thing where we can actually do a change and use public procurement more in our work to actually support green fossil-free transport solutions. And really putting the beam on what you want to grow, to leave behind what is not important for the future. And that is typically also what we see on the business side, that we believe that this is actually accelerating towards more of a green economy now. This is the time to take this opportunity, and there is a lot of prioritization made to leave the old parts behind and focusing on what you really need to put focus on to have a business in the future.
So really great to see an industry voice with such a level of optimism here about the need for renewal. So this was some very short snippets from our interview with Vestra Götaland. So I really encourage all to watch the full interview on the Direct to Zero website.
Great. Cristiano, it was wonderful to have you on today, and we want to encourage you to stay on with us because we are going to get to a discussion portion of our program today. But thank you for those great insights to what's happening in our global community. And now we'll bring it here in California. Bill, you have a great guest with us to talk about infrastructure and how we need to prepare for the ACT rule in California.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, those were great lessons from global partners. California and the MOU states are really looking at how infrastructure needs to be scaled up. It is becoming the critical path issue, really, for commercial zero-emission vehicles, trucks and buses. So we're really pleased to have joining us today Ben D'Alba of the California Energy Commission. Ben is the senior advisor to the lead commissioner for transportation, Patty Monahan, who's done such a fantastic job in kind of a renewal of focus, we think, at that agency. So that's my personal opinion, but really excited to have Ben joining us today. And Ben, first of all, welcome. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Bill and Alicia. It's really a pleasure to be part of your update.
Well, so good to have you. And I think that first question that everybody would really like to know is, with this recently enacted Advanced Clean Truck Program and those aggressive timelines, is the Energy Commission aligning its work around those goals and achieving those aggressive goals? And if you can give us a sense of, if so, what form will that take to pull California forward?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I want to say, you know, tipping my hat to my colleagues over at the Air Resources Board for all the hard work and time spent on that regulation. It's great for California. It's going to have ripple effects across the nation and around the globe. So really proud of what's coming out of the Air Resources Board, and I know my boss, Commissioner Monahan, agrees. Yeah, we have some real tangible examples of us partnering together with the Air Board to prep for the incoming wave of zero-emission trucks. One of those is our upcoming pilot demonstration for drayage trucks. Particularly, we want to see a pilot of about 50 to 100 trucks on our roadways, taking cargo in and out of the ports. We haven't really seen a large demonstration of that effect yet. So we're working with the Air Resources Board directly. They're bringing funding from their climate and investment program, and we're going to bring funds from our clean transportation program to create this grant opportunity for this large pilot. And I think we really want to see a couple things come out of this. One, on the vehicle side, we want to make sure that manufacturers can deliver on a large order of trucks to this magnitude. I think that's really important. And then particularly to the Energy Commission, we want to demonstrate the infrastructure side in being able to charge and refill these vehicles that are on the road. We haven't, seen or gathered information quite to this effect, so I think this is going to be a great partnership and a great opportunity, and we're hoping to see a couple projects come forward out of this opportunity.
That's great, Ben. And we understand from manufacturers and fleets the challenge and the critical issue of getting to scale, really getting infrastructure where it needs to be in order to meet these important deployments. Where do you see the Energy Commission's role in advancing zero emission and medium and heavy duty infrastructure to help meet the demand and the policies that we see on the forefront to require the adoption of zero emission vehicles?
Yeah, important question. So the Energy Commission has a vital role to play in this deployment for infrastructure. And as I sort of was alluding to earlier about the pilot demo, we have this mutual understanding with the Air Resources Board that they're focusing on the vehicle deployment side, while the Energy Commission is really need to take some leadership on the infrastructure. And I think first and foremost, the Energy Commission needs to convene the stakeholders. We need to talk through the issues at hand and work through some of these challenges. And we're doing that. And the legislature asked us to do a statewide charging infrastructure assessment. We're supposed to have that done here by the end of the calendar year. And we're also doing this through the annual policy plan that we put together every year at the Energy Commission called the Integrated Energy Policy Report. We chose to do the 2020 Integrated Energy Policy Report on transportation, and we've been hosting a series of workshops where we're talking about all of these challenges and what should the state strategy be for deploying infrastructure. And then also we need to be a funder. We have to sort of put some actions to our words, and we're doing that. We've committed we're proposing to put about 134 million of our Clean Transportation Program funding for medium and heavy duty investments, and that's extraordinary by any means for any history of the Energy Commission. And I think that's a tremendous signal to the industry, and one where we can make a huge dent in the deployment of infrastructure.
That's such a really good point you make, because this is a new scale of magnitude of these investments, Ben, that I think the Energy Commission's putting in, really leaning into this. As you're starting to target your dollars, where do you see the big barriers to scaling infrastructure? Are there some top dogs that you really want to focus on with your dollars in the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest barrier is cost. And of course, that looks different from when you're talking about hydrogen or you're talking about charging infrastructure. So putting any amount of funding behind the deployment of those infrastructure pieces is important. That's what we're doing. I think space is going to be a big problem for a lot of folks, the transit sector and in the freight world, where we're asking them to rethink how they refuel their fleets, and a lot of them are going to be refueling at their depot, and they're already space constrained. So we want to help with the planning side of things. I think we want to make sure that we give support for the fleet operators to make the adjustments to their sites and so forth. And then I'll also say that interoperability and vehicle grid integration are going to be important considerations as we move forward to this zero emission future. We want to make sure that if a drayage truck pulling cargo out of the port and taking it to a warehouse or distribution center, that truck can refuel anywhere along its route without having to worry about a plug being a different socket or so forth. So, and then the vehicle grid integration side, when they do decide to refuel that, they're doing so smartly and it's integrated well with the grid.
Yeah, really.
And then finally, so I'll just make one more point that we have to integrate the community perspective in all of this. So that's going to be one key factor as we go forward.
I think the community voice in this is pretty critical. And it is interesting on interoperability as well. This is one of the good lessons that maybe we can help bring in from Sweden, because that's exactly what they want to be testing, is how to make sure this works as a system, not just as a series of individual charge sites.
So I know that we want to bring in some guest perspectives from our audience, Ben, but just real quickly, I know that you have a number of really important funding programs that are going to be released to support advancing medium and heavy duty zero emission infrastructure. Can you just quickly review some of those programs? Because I think they're going to be really helpful as we talk about needs and scaling, and there are a number of different projects that you're supporting.
Absolutely. So I touched on the drayage pilot earlier, and I mentioned blueprint planning grant opportunities for fleet owners. What I didn't say is we're also putting forward funding opportunities for the transit sector specifically. We want to make a couple big investments in one or two or three transit operators to convert their whole operation to zero emission vehicles. So that one, as well as the blueprint, actually hit the streets last week. And then in the future, I said the 134 million is planning. We want to make sure we have a long-term sustainable program that's going to be making investments and providing incentives for refueling infrastructure as well.
That's great. And great job. I know you had a lot to cover there. All right. Well, I do know that we have on standby our friend Jacqueline Moore with the Port of Long Beach. Jacqueline, can you join us? Would love to get you into this discussion and hear your perspective certainly about these important programs and policies. And then certainly I know the Port is working hard on evaluating infrastructure needs to support zero emission terminal operations. Let's go ahead and bring you into the program, and we would love to hear from you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, Jack.
All right, so I think Ben hit it right on the nose there, that we want to make sure that these drayage trucks that visit the port can also go back to their depot or the Inland Empire or rail yard. So whatever their normal duty cycles are, we want to make sure zero emission drayage trucks can still fit within that model. Strong truck rules are vital to creating that demand for zero emission trucks. I don't believe this is necessarily a you will build it and they will come sort of problem that we have here. We need the infrastructure at the same time to go along with these trucks. Ben also mentioned that EV blueprint that recently was out on the streets. Long Beach, we recently, just in the last couple of years, we completed our first blueprint. And within that process, we learned a lot of great information, brought a lot of important stakeholders together within that process. And we identified a lot of great next steps that we need to do, but it's almost an endless list of next steps that we need to do. And as for infrastructure itself, you've probably heard the ports in the past talk about land is at a premium here. There's not necessarily room to create enough infrastructure to support the 13,000 trucks that visit the port and do over 300 moves of containers every month. So we just don't have that capacity here at the port. So it will take some real planned research and deployments and where to place these EVSEs or hydrogen fueling stations. We are fuel neutral here, so we really do need a cognitive look at a 710 or regional deployment of infrastructure to not only support the ports but also the rail yards and other warehouses and other stakeholders that are part of this goods movement industry that moves the state and the nation.
Great, Jackie. Thank you for those observations. Ben, it really does tie into a lot of the things that you laid out. What would be kind of your observation there? We almost need to have planning grants on steroids and then with billions rather than millions. Do you think, what do we need to do next, and how do we build this out as fast as we need to? One last thought from you.
Yeah, well, I don't think any one agency or organization can do this all on their own. I think it's really going to take partnerships, especially at the regional and local levels, to make the planning work and get it right. So that's working through our metropolitan planning organizations. That's working with our transportation planners, urban planners, and so forth. It all has to come together.
Well, Ben, thank you so much. And Jacqueline and Cristiano, it's been great to have you on our program today. We've learned so much from you. And I think before we close up for today, I do have one more poll. I would like to hear from our audience. infrastructure needs that you see. So what are the most urgent needs to assist with scaling infrastructure to meet the ACT and MOU goals? First option here, planning for infrastructure needs. Secondly, adding electrical capacity for vehicles and installing charging. Ensuring infrastructure can accommodate future growth. Okay, last option, no help needed at all. What say you, my friends?
I'm guessing it's not the last category, but it will be interesting to hear that. And I think, it's so interesting hearing what Jackie talked about, because we really need this comprehensive system approach. It's not even just facility by facility, but really thinking about this system.
That's right. All right, Bonnie, let's see those results. All right, it looks like we have a pretty good spread here across. First off, planning for infrastructure needs, 34%, followed by adding electrical capacity for the vehicles and installing charging. And then ensuring that infrastructure can accommodate future growth. I think we had a pretty good spread across the options there, with the exception that no one seems to not need help. All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we pinned that one down. That's good. All right. Thank you, and thanks to our guests this week and to our attendees. This was a good discussion, and it's really great to have the Energy Commission in California really leaning into this with the Air Resources Board and the other state agencies so that this state can actually continue to be its leader. But that does it for one more time. We're coming to the end of this edition of the Clean Commercial Transportation Update. It goes by quick. Really glad you could join us, though. Remember, each week's episode is actually posted on our website by Monday of next week if you missed a segment or want to review some of the slides or other material. And please also follow our Twitter account for updates and to interact. Next week, we'll take a look at innovative work that's going on in transit, particularly around work on a next-generation purpose-built automated transit vehicle. That's going to be a really interesting, deeper dive. And in 2 weeks, we'll take a deeper look at what's going on with the marine sector and some really innovative technology there. Until then, though, for Alicia Gildy and our Clean Commercial Transportation team here at CalSTART, I'm Bill Van Amberg. Please be safe, stay healthy. If you're in a region with high COVID impact, please wear a mask, take care of yourself, and take care of others. We'll see you right back here next week at the same time for Clean Commercial Transportation Update. Goodbye.